Well, good evening. Well, let me do my hallelujah. Hallelujah! Light! Oh, the funniest thing happened. I was just getting ready to go on, and I had a phone call, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't. So I'm talking into this phone, going, I don't know what to do. How do you delete this? Whatever. So I closed it out, and I realized I could delete a post. When I tell you, I am learning as I go along. You cannot imagine. It's not like I have several people in the house who are technology savvy and that is their business. You're looking at a woman who's had to learn this all on her own, except with a few friends who I have troubled with, problems with. So, anyway, before we go into the reading, I have to say, again, I thank you. Oh my goodness, you are sharing. We are now having a visitor from Australia and Toronto and some south at the border and some island people. The word is definitely getting out that there is this woman in Boca Raton who talks into her phone and is reading her book. And also, before I do my reading, I want to repeat that all information will be on my website. Well, it has been on my website for years, but we reorganized it to make it convenient. So go to susanmintz.com, and on the front page, you'll see some wonderful photos. You'll see what my darling late husband looked like, handsome. And then you can go to the books page. You will see Committed to Love, the abbreviated 13-page version of my book. Ta-da! And it's important because for those of you who are going to have a hard time going back and forth with me in my readings, the document is very explicit and very complete. There's also verbal, I'm talking about anything pertaining to the book is on the books page. Anything pertaining to media, whether it's print, live, interviews about my other book, And I Held Their Hands with a Hospice Heart, which is 24 stories of incredible people I met while I volunteered at Hospice by the Sea here in Boca. So the media page and the other page, and then if you did want to know about my Jeffrey, there's a big thing about him. There's a 4-part thing about Jeffrey, that you could 4-part segment on my Facebook page, on my website. Every time I do these, I swear I look over to my left as if to see his spirit sitting there. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is so important. This is so good for me to do. I keep saying it. It's so good for me to do. I look so forward to this because I am connecting with people. Seriously. I think I charged my phone a couple of times yesterday and last night and today because I keep going on Facebook and it goes from 40 to 45 to 50 to 55 to 70 to 75. And I keep thinking, oh my goodness, I am absolutely touching people by doing something that's so wonderful. And again, I just thank you all because I'm doing this. I know it's repetitive, but I don't think you can ever thank people enough for their time. You're giving me your time. If you're not spending time with me right now at 5:30 Boca time, East Coast time, you're taking time to spend with me at your own time. And then all these posts, I think I did count. Every day I count, but I forget. I think there's 11. They're all on my Facebook page. And I keep saying these things over and over for those of you who are just telling your friends. Tell your colleagues. Tell people outside of Facebook. Hi, Lucy. Tell people outside of Facebook. Tell your family or your colleagues or tell people you don't even like. tell people, like when I was going to look for dental hygiene patients in Texas to clean their teeth, when I was looking for a patient really to get my boards in Texas, I was running around the streets asking anybody, you want to get your teeth cleaned? Even if you don't like somebody, this is a great opportunity to tell someone, hey, you want a good story? They'll make you laugh and cry. You want to look at a lady who's been there and done that? Go to this lady's Facebook page. Read about it. I guarantee you, she sometimes make you laugh, sometimes make you cry. And other thing, the reason I've been twitching around yesterday especially is I have physical therapy. This is a reality show. I had physical therapy for my left knee. It's doing very well with physical therapy, but the day of, I can't find a spot for myself. So I'm resting it, I'm jumping around. I mean, I guess, and I was moving everywhere. Of course, if I probably had a laptop and I was doing it properly, which I'm not, I like my phone in the dining room just the way it is. But if I was, I probably wouldn't be moving around so much, but you all get the hint. So what I'm going to do is I thank you. Go to SusanMintz.com. Don't have to buy a book. I want a series. I want someone out there who works for Netflix, Hulu, Prime. I keep telling you that. Somebody out there wants this story. All right, so let's encapsulate real quick. Susan and Jeffrey get married. Susan has a miscarriage. Susan finds out on her honeymoon he's gay. They live in Albany, he gets his master's. They move to Gainesville, he gets his doctorate. They move to Houston. You think you're going to be okay, Suze? Everything's going to be all right? He's now Dr. Jeffrey A. Mintz. Stuff goes with you. That's for sure. He was gay. He said he thought he was gay. He tried not to be gay. He was gay. He was a bisexual. Deal with it, Susan. I tried to. I was on chapter 3, which was chasing celibacy to protect myself. Now, I'm not going to get into why celibacy was so important because there's a whole chapter on the STDs I got and why when I heard about AIDS in 81, that was a really big decision. So, next thing I know, just to back up a little, I loved him. And my life was crazy. And it was up and down. And it was fuel. It was everything. It was everything right. It was everything wrong. The marriage was from hell. The friendship was from heaven. And I know a lot of you out there can understand this, and that's why you're tuning in. Because you're in relationships that you don't know if you should stay in them or if you shouldn't. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know where it's going to be. And I can tell you right now, I didn't have a clue until the voice of God said stay with him when I heard about AIDS. And that was it in 1981 when I heard about AIDS. And I knew then my fate was sealed, that I had to stay with him. When he came home that night after we'd heard about HIV, AIDS in 81, I was frightened, I was scared, I was a mess. And he looked at me and he thought I was sick. He said, Susan, you're scaring me. I think are you sick? And I just wanted to laugh and go, Jeffrey, have you heard about AIDS, HIV, and the men that were passing? He said yes. We held each other. He went into denial completely, thinking I could save him. And that's in the previous reading. You'll get caught up on this. But he thought I could save him. He thought I could prevent it. And he was in denial. And all of you out there, at some point, you're probably going to deny something in your life too. That's what I love about doing this, is that I know I'm touching you. I'm touching you in a way that your friends might not. That a therapist might, but I'm not charging you. I love that. But I know one thing, that everything I'm dealing with in my life, every issue that I've dealt with in my life, wouldn't be AIDS, doesn't be bisexuality, but when I talk about fear, or I talk about frustrations, or I'm going to talk about baby steps, or I'm going to talk about all the different issues I faced, you will, in your life, face them in some way, one way or another. So, backing up before I go on, and I really mean that. I mean, if you read the table of contents, which you can't read because you don't have it, the main thing is that I wrote this as an issues book, where it says the fear factor, the dreaded diagnosis, No more lies. Why me? Is there a God? The frustration factor. Prioritizing and organizing. I wrote this as an issues book. I wrote this for people. I wrote this for me. But now, I'm not just rereading it for me. I'm reading this for you because I can promise you, if it's a couple months or 3 months, you are going to know that at some point in your life, you're going to face the same issues I did, only with a different reason why. So, I'm going to back up now. We knew that after I lost the baby, that we weren't going to have children. Getting pregnant was the catalyst that brought us together, but we weren't supposed to be parents. It wasn't just because we were selfish, though we were. We just didn't want to admit that we couldn't have made the sacrifices involved with raising kids. Having children wasn't going to fit into our lifestyle. How could we bring a child into our unstable environment? We're talking about this, the early 70s right now. I'd been taking birth control pills since the miscarriage and began to experience some side effects from their long-term use. After 7 years of marriage, we stopped having sex as frequently as we had before. The spontaneity and passion had dwindled over the years, and we weren't doing anything to rekindle those dying embers. We knew that Houston was going to be our home for a long time. We'd built our house. You had a wonderful job. You enjoyed that job. And I had time to do the things I always wanted to do. Here's the clicker to the end of this one. On May 4th, 1976, my 30th birthday, you came home from work with flowers, cards, and my favorite perfume. Then you said to me, quote, "Susan, this is a special birthday. We'll do anything you want to do," end quote. I said, "Jeff, I'd like to get my tubes tied. I want to check into the hospital, buy a sexy nightgown, and get fixed," end quote. That's not a conversation you have every day, but we did. Here we're going to start our new reading. You didn't expect that, did you? It was a difficult decision for us to make, but it was the right one. This is really big. My doctor said the insurance company wouldn't pay for the procedure, obviously. I was 30 years old, didn't have any medical reason for the surgery, and I might change my mind and want children later on. This doctor did happen to know the circumstances of our marriage and was an excellent doctor and knew me. She said that I might change my mind and want children later on. On a personal level, my doctor didn't have any problems performing the operation. She believed it was my right to decide what was best for me. You'd think we were talking about today, 2022. This is in 1976. On a personal level, my doctor didn't have any problems performing the operation. She believed it was my right to decide what was best for me. She told us that if I had a psychological reason, and I'm married to the psychologist, she told us that if I had a psychological reason for the surgery, they would approve it. I told her that my husband was bisexual, but we chose to stay married. Children wouldn't fit into our family picture. I think it was the quickest letter ever drafted to an insurance company. I went into more graphic detail later on, but a part of that was she knew Jeffrey was bisexual, and she knew our marriage was chaotic, my gynecologist. So she personally didn't have a problem with it. The other reason was I told her that personally, if I did get pregnant, I would literally kill it or abort it myself. And that was me back then at 30. And I told her that. So I said, I'll either abort it or I'll kill it myself. That was probably the quickest letter, as I was saying. She told us that if I had a psychological reason, imagine telling her I'll kill it, that she would have no problem. I told her you were bisexual and we chose to stay married, the children fit our picture. I think that was the quickest letter ever drafted to an insurance company. She went into all the details, his bisexuality, the ink was still wet when she mailed it to them. I was scheduled 2 weeks later for a tubal ligation. After the operation, I remember coming out of the anesthesia and telling her I thought the psychological factor made the whole thing even more dramatic and exciting. You said to her, Jeffrey said to her, Susan never had a problem with the difficult decisions. It was always the little ones that threw her. I mean, this was the way he handled it. Susan never had a problem with the difficult decisions. It was always the little ones that threw her. When we were first married, I blamed you for my frequent vaginal infections. I went into this. I knew they weren't your fault, but I was miserable. I didn't enjoy having sex because I was afraid of getting another yeast infection. Eventually, I accepted the fact that I was prone to getting them whether we had sex or not. In 1978, 2 years after I'd had my tubes tied, you gave me my first sexually transmitted disease, and it was syphilis. I had a sore around, this might be to some of you a little too graphic, but sweetheart, this is my story and I'm telling it. It was syphilis. I had a sore around my genital area that wouldn't go away. After 2 weeks, I went to my gynecologist. She said I had syphilis. And all of this is going to build up to why celibacy saved my life. But you'll have to stay tuned for a bit until you get to that point. She said I had syphilis. I didn't know how to react. I said, syphilis? How could that be? Only dirty people get syphilis. No, I can't have that. But I did have syphilis, and I got it from you. She gave me antibiotics and said the sore would go away and that I would be fine. At that moment, hatred was the only feeling I had towards you. When you came home, I said, quote, you gave this to me. How could you? You don't even know which one of your dirty partners gave you this disease. How could you be so careless with your body? End quote. This was my first wake-up call. It prepared me for other more terrifying diseases in the future. A couple of years later, and I know that you can relate to this, many of you, whether you're young and having sex outside of marriage and you're not using protection, HIV is still here. It's not like it was back then, but STDs have not gone away. None of them. But they can be easily treated. HIV has some great medications out. I wish Jeff would have been able to get on them, though I don't think he would have wanted to. But I'm not comparing today to then, except the STDs that are out there can happen, and they are happening. A couple of years later, I'd experienced the second sexually transmitted disease. This one was more serious and remained with me the rest of my life. It started with a burning and tingling in my vaginal area. Then I experienced an increase in my vaginal secretions. I broke out with small blisters on my genitals. The next phase was a lesion that lasted 7 to 10 days. and it was terribly painful. The outbreaks were several weeks apart, but continuous. I know many of you are going through this. This went on for 6 months. I was afraid and didn't know what to do. When I mentioned this to you, you said you had the same thing once in a while. Other than my gynecologist, I didn't have anyone to talk to about these infections. I didn't. I had no one I could share any of this with. I finally went to my doctor. She said it was genital herpes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She told me to take the antiviral Zovirax regularly, watch my diet, and reduce the stress. How could I reduce the stress? I was stress. I hated you more and more. I confronted you screaming, quote, "You bastard, and now a virus I'll have for the rest of my life. How many more disgusting diseases are you going to give me?" I referred to your partners as, quote, "the generic brand," end quote, because you met them in baths or bars. Many of them didn't even have a name. You had this amazing gift for using people, but you always made them feel good about it. I never wanted to know the details of your liaisons and desperately tried to erase your nights out from my thoughts. However, the diseases you gave me were from unprotected, unsafe sex with men you did not know. You developed a sexual pattern of behavior with your lovers, and the ensuing sexual relationships were based on one thing. These men satisfied your need to be with a man. No more, no less. It was lust and sex. It wasn't pretty. There weren't any commitments, and they never lasted. They were one-night stands, but I hated you for what you were doing to me. I was sick of being sick and tired of getting diseases from secondhand partners. I was psychologically and physically scared to have sex because I didn't want to go through any more pain. I didn't care if you put a condom on. I didn't want you to touch me any longer. I was becoming frigid, and the thought of sexual intercourse turned me off. I said to you, quote, "If I want to get a disease, I'll get it firsthand from my own partner, not yours," end quote. I knew I was going to have to take care of myself, or I'd suffer more serious consequences. In the early 80s, with the AIDS epidemic increasing so, was the number of innocent lives lost to this deadly disease. When you told me you'd met someone significant, I knew I had to make a life-altering decision. I couldn't allow myself to be put at any risk any longer. I couldn't change you, and I wouldn't leave you. Choosing celibacy was the only thing I could do to protect myself. I remember every detail when I told you my decision. We'd agreed that Tuesday and Thursday evenings would be your 2 nights out. Late one Friday evening you called stating you wanted to see a drag show at a local gay bar. I even like those. You said you'd be home late. It was 4:00 a.m. when you finally came home. I was furious. How dare you use me and take advantage of our private time? When you got into bed, I turned on the light. You were surprised because you thought I was sleeping. I said, "Jeff," end quote, "I'm only going to say this once. You are who you are, and I'll try my best to accept that. I'll love you, live with you, and care for you. But I won't die for you. I know You won't get an HIV test. Therefore, I won't have sexual intercourse with you any longer. Every time you have sex with a man, you're putting my life on the line too. I have to take matters into my own hands. I've made this decision. I've made this decision for my own protection. End quote. You were calm, understanding. You said, I respect your decision, and if that's your choice, I'll accept it. That was the end of our conversation, and it was that my decision that did save my life. Before I go on to chapter 4, I'm going to end it there because I want to expound on this, and I'll read the last paragraph of chapter 3 tomorrow. These are some of the decisions, not mine perhaps, not yours, I mean, but these are some of the decisions you will have to make in life. Cheating is never going to stop. Infidelity is here to stay. I always say that nobody got a divorce because they didn't take out the trash. But I know for me, I loved him. I loved the life he was providing for me, the resources, the adventures, the trips, the theater, the arts, I loved the drag shows. I mean, I loved that part, and sometimes I didn't like his affairs, but I loved the gay bars with the drag shows and the outfits, and Lord knows I knew so many of them. I'll get into that later on, but I mean, at any given moment at 4 o'clock in the morning after a drag show, I was baking brownies, and there were a couple of them, Queen sitting, like Liza Minnelli or Cher at that time, was sitting in my living room waiting for the brownies to come out. So I was a part of that, but it was the diseases and the issues that surrounded my illnesses. When I was in the health field and so conscious of my appearance and my health, it was that got to me, that I knew I had to make a choice. So for some of you, you'll have to make these kind of serious decisions in your life. Should I stay or should I go? Should I leave? It's yours. I'll always say this is your journey. No judgment here. I'm going to be 76, May 4th. Take it from silver-haired, a little wisdom underneath the hair, I hope. It's your journey. Nobody can judge you. You make your decisions, but you know that the decisions you make will stay with you perhaps for the rest of your life, and you better be able to deal with them. And I want to tell you another thing I don't do. I don't go over my videos or interviews. I don't read texts. Well, obviously, some of you know the texts I write are letters, and they're horrible. So then I have to write an apology saying, I don't text while I'm a writer. I write letters. But I don't listen to these interviews until later. And that's why whenever I've done a live show or a live interview, they can sit for a week or two before I'll proof them, or I'll read them and think, oh, that was really good, or Susan, stop playing with your hair and moving around. So just so you know, this is really live, and I'm not going to check it. I'm not deleting it. I'm not changing a thing. I love this man. I loved my life. I'm committed to love. Committed the back chapter, but go to Susan Mintz, and you can read that short story. And you will read it and understand everything we're talking about. Some more will be even more graphic down the road. And the one thing I know is that you know it's me. That's it. Alex, thank you. And again, I will probably be checking how many people viewed all night, all day tomorrow. I'm hitting a record. I got 81 views and 53 viewers. So I don't know if you should call viewers or viewesses for women, view S. But all I know is there's some people who are listening, and that's all I care about, is I want you to hopefully get something out of this story that's going to help you in your life, whether you be 18, 98, 108, if you can even hear or read or see. God bless you, and you know what I'm going to say. Shalom. Shalom, hello. This is going to be so good when I have my series, my talk show in general, when they're doing real live interviews on CNN and MSNBC and all of the stations, because one of you is going to get me to the right person. Shalom, hello. Shalom, goodbye. And shalom, peace. May you have a peaceful night. And I thank you all so much for your love, for your support, and for your time. Your time. The valuable time you've taken to go and listen and read and share. Thank you. Shalom. Let me hit finish.